Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our lecture, Sri Lanka. For those who are not aware, we are the Sri Lanka Natural History Society, as it says on this banner over here. And this is we have a series of monthly lectures, and this is our lecture today. We are happy that these lectures are sponsored by George Stewart and Company. And today we have a wonderful speaker, Nirmalie Pallewatta has a BSc Honours First Class degree in Zoology from the University of Colombo and read for her PhD in Entomology from Imperial College of Science, Technology and Medicine, University of London. She is currently a retired professor in Zoology and Environmental Science, University of Colombo, but since 1990s, she branched out from pure academia into many other ecological and environmental topics, especially with those that combined environment conservation with development actions. And she served 2 years on sabbatical leave as the program officer of the Regional Biodiversity Program Asia of the IUCN, the World Conservation Union, and has contributed to many regional and global environmental programs. She has worked with the Ministry of Environment since the early 2000s and the DWC, that is the Department of Wildlife Conservation, since the late 1990s in various capacities. So she's the perfect person to deliver our lecture today, and we're so grateful to have Nirmalie here. Dr. Pallewatta, I'll hand over to you.
Thank you very much. My apologies for getting a little late, because even though I am from the University of Colombo and I still come here as a visiting academic, I was kind of walking around in the wrong building. So while he's getting it, thank you very much. Okay. Thank you very much, Professor Inoka and the Sri Lanka Natural History Society for inviting me. And Prashanta is the person who first asked me whether I could talk on insects, because he heard what I was saying at the Department of Wildlife Conservation's Wildlife Symposium. So let me move on to what I want to say. So I'll quickly go through this so that, you know, if there's anything you need to know more, we can talk about it. Invertebrates are what we entomologists call the other 99% of biodiversity, because, you know, all of Sri Lanka, or perhaps may I say even the whole world, is chasing behind elephants and tigers and leopards and bears, and, you know, with good reason, I suppose. But it is important to know that the world runs on many things that we don't quite see or even understand. And of course, we, when I say we, collectively, all of Sri Lanka and the rest of the globe, we, rest of human society, do not see many of the animals that run the world. So why are insects so important? Number one, I'll just sort of quickly go through these as a first thing, because, you know, now I believe a lot of you may have heard about ecosystem services and goods, right? Goods are the things that we get, like tangible things like fruits and medicine and timber and all that. More recently, they've been called nature's contributions to people, NCPs, right? That's why I put it up. And there are 4 main categories: regulating services. Okay, all right, thank you. That's pollination. We all know that unless plants are pollinated, they will not bear fruit, okay? So therefore, insects are the ones that are the most important in carrying out pollination. Birds, bats, and you move a little, that's it, so they can see. Yeah, okay, all right. Is that okay?
Thank you. Yeah, that's fine.
Oh, okay.
Thank you speaking
that. All right, so let me.
Anyway, you have to speak to the mic.
Yeah, I know, I had to speak to the mic as well. I'm sure you can all hear me, right?
Maybe if you speak from this side, Doctor.
Okay, okay. All right.
That's fine.
Much better.
Hold up.
Yeah, good, thank you. Right. Yeah, I can see that can you see the words on the screen?
Yes, yes.
Okay, all right. So, pollination, approximately 75% of the global food supply crops and 88% of all flowering plants are pollinated by insects. Biological pest control, they are predators, they are parasites, and okay, then 2, supporting services. The most important thing that I'd like to draw your attention is that insects are ecosystem engineers, which means that they make physical alterations to the structure of the ecosystems where they live, right? For example, I mean, they by their action, they create new habitats. They sort of, enable other organisms to live in places that would not have been possible in the absence of those insect species. Of course, they are decomposers. You can imagine trying to live in a world where there is no decomposition. I mean, this whole problem with plastics is simply that, right? And soil engineering. Now, you walk past termite mounds, maybe, hopefully not in urban center, but, say you go on your field visits or wherever, you might go for recreation, national parks. You will walk past termite mound, anthills. Those are the things that have been obviously created by the insects, but they sort of engineer the habitat physically and change its aeration, levels of water percolation, nutrient, concentration levels, etc. And shelter building by insect. Now, herbivores are insects that, okay, not just insects, but animals that eat plants, herbivores. But insects that are herbivores also create sort of opportunities for other organisms to live, either inside or on the plant. So that's, provisioning services, human food and animal feed, over 2,000 species, by the way, insects are eaten. I think you all know. We Sri Lankans, luckily, we have not resorted to eating insects, and I'm very happy about that, because entomophagy is something actually that's promoted even at a global level, because in the face of, maybe, there was talk about food, supply being in crisis due to climate change, agricultural productivity plunging, etc., etc. And eating insects was being actively promoted. And I think all of you, if you have been to Thailand, would have seen those sacks of, I mean, no offense meant to the Thai people, of course. It's just the way they have, that's part of their culture, I suppose. Cockroaches, edible dried cockroaches. I mean, we obviously don't like it because we don't have that tradition. Sri Lankans are very, I suppose, blessed to not to have to eat cockroaches or insects. I mean, it is not to say that they are wrong or something. All I'm saying is just a matter of what you're used to. That's all. And wildlife nutrition, because they are the food for many animals, right? Anteaters, etc. But birds, fish, and I believe the very important connection between bats and insects, nocturnal bats. Bats, the echolocating bats have evolved with the insects to home in on them using echolocation, bouncing sound of the body and the wings of the insects, and a very sophisticated sonar system, which is in the bat, to locate where the insects are flying, the rate at which they're flying, etc. It's a very complex evolutionary relationship and a very sophisticated scientific system. Of course, honey, wax, dyes, these were more important, I suppose, 50 years ago. Now, given the ability of human beings to synthesize many without having to resort to having to use the insect or the plants, there may be less in, but I think honey, synthetic honey or whatever, is not exactly something that people still would like to buy. Of course, cultural and education services, aesthetics, education, exactly why we are here, and all these university programs, courses built around on teaching insects, about insects, and more importantly, I should think learning from their systems, right? Learning from their system. This is a very vast topic, but many, how may I say, industrial, products have been based on nature. I mean, nature including the structure of insect wings, the way the colors are created, etc. Increasingly, the last bullet point is becoming extremely important because biological indicators, these are the plants and animals that actually tell you about I'm not sure that you ought to use the word health, but quality of the environment, long before we realize that something is wrong. Insects are among the best biological indicators of environmental quality. I'll come to that in a later slide. Of course, why are they so important? Their diversity. And by the way, I just want to tell, because this is being recorded, all the images Gemini generated are mine, right? The others I have used with the permission of my former students and collaborators who very kindly agreed to, give the use of their photographs. And I believe, I mean, INOCA and SLNHS, this slide, I mean, I have no problem. You may, share it with anybody who wants to. So, just to sort of take a sort of, how may I say, a little light-hearted thing. The famous British geneticist, and he was also a very famous scientist for many other reasons, J.B.S. Haldane is credited with this statement that God had an inordinate fondness for beetles because he studied nature for a long time. He was also a geneticist. And if you read this, at dinner, he was asked by a group of theologians, so what can you say about the mind of the Creator after studying a lot of time of your lifetime spent studying natural world? And he's reported to have said this. Well, he may have said it in a light-hearted manner, but it was grounded in scientific truth because beetles are among the most diverse of all known animal species. We don't quite see it that way, but that's the truth. We do not know, and I really don't think we will ever know how many species of beetles are there on this planet because they are so diverse and they occupy such a wide range of habitats. This is just again, just to sort of show you the typical way of showing this inordinate fondness for beetles. I did this, and by the way, I asked, you do what is called prompt engineering to create your AI images. I told the image generator to create these types of beetles because these are the ones that I have seen. Of course, in the 1990s, I used to go, not 90s, early 80s, I can't remember, there's a government cashew farm called Kondachi, right, I think it's north of Chilla. Okay? It used to be a very extensive forested area that had been obviously taken over for cashew cultivation, at least part of it. I'm not sure how much of that now exists or if that plantation still exists. But what I do remember is that when we walk along those forest paths, these very shiny, extremely beautiful beetles, right? And they're really large. They would be fallen on the ground. And we were like fascinated by that because those iridescent colors, extremely beautiful. Now, I have not gone to Kondachi because the war broke out, that and so many times. I haven't gone to Kondachi, but I don't think, now I've gone on field work to other parts in Sri Lanka where you would expect, because these are mostly dry zone living insects. I have not seen them. So it tells me about, very possible loss of maybe local extinction. Local means they have died out from there, not necessarily that they've got extinct from the whole of Sri Lanka, but I have not seen those extremely large, very shiny beetles for a long time, during field work. Of course, these are, this is something that I again generated just to show you. These are real colors, not things that this image generator, The ants, they are the little things that run the world. E.O. Wilson is perhaps one of the greatest entomologists that ever lived. And he's the one who actually sort of, gave good press to the ants because he showed what they're capable of. They are immensely complex social structure, right? That requires a lot of, evolutionarily, they have evolved into having a very complex communication system between the members of the ant society. And they are also predators. I know a lot of you who might have ants in your kitchen, including myself. We don't quite kindly take on them. However, this is the reality. The fact is that they're extremely adaptable. So that's why they are all, living in very highly human modified conditions. Just to give a little illustration, this is the diversity of ants that you would see. That's a sort of a, very sort of, how may I say, it's not very, not to be taken too seriously, but the types of ants that you might notice if you take a walk in a forested area. I mean, dry zone or wet zone, doesn't matter, right? Sri Lanka also has, by the way, one species of relict ant. It is only found in Sri Lanka. Yes, it's Anurata simone, it's considered endangered. Lives in the wet zone forests. Pompakale is that forest, patch of forest that is adjacent to the Ratnapura town. And it houses there's a water pumping station or something. That's why it's called Pompakale. And this insect is found there. But I believe it's also found in other parts because Singaraja is close by. And it has been found in many other areas. But it's extremely important that we maintain this because this is the only one that, Anuritis of the genus in Sri Lanka. Leaf cutter ants, again, they sort of have this habit of cutting leaves and carrying it on top of their, using their mandibles like flags. You see them kind of streaming in, like a procession along branches. I teach entomology even now, so I have to say that you may be utterly bored by this, but I have to tell you something about the evolutionary biology because I also teach something about that. Insects originated 400 million years ago, and these 400 million years on 6 legs. What sets them apart from other invertebrates is that they have 6 legs. Okay, a lot of people mistake spiders and insects. Spiders have 8 legs, and I don't particularly like spiders, and I don't wait to count their legs. If I see them, I kind of run away. But insects, sometimes they look like spiders. This is because of different adaptations. But if you look closely, that's because, their mandibles, their mouth parts have got modified to look like another pair of legs. But, and some spiders look like insects, but having 8 legs and 6 legs is the main difference. They're a major component of the Earth's biodiversity. And for evolutionary biologists, they are the most remarkable lineage that has survived for so long. They're the first and now the only living vertebrates that can fly. Insects are the only invertebrates, that have wings. And they're the first to establish societies. These ant hills, termite hills, bee colonies are extremely complex systems. We don't realize it, but there's this constant exchange of volatile chemicals between the members of the society, that colony. Without that, that colony structure will break down. And how they communicate with each other, that is to maintain the colony, is by what we call pheromones. I'm not sure, how many have heard that, but pheromones are volatile chemicals, some very often volatile. Others are like contact chemicals, you have to come in contact with it. They are the chemical messengers that tell the workers, you stay a worker. You don't try to be a queen, right? You are a soldier, you do your job. I'm putting it in a very simple way, but that communication structure using chemicals is what maintains these colonies, right? What then is this problem? Obviously, this is it. We do not know much of the insect diversity. I didn't want to hazard a guess because I might end up being very wrong, and since this is a public lecture, it is best to stay safe and say the majority remains unknown. That I'm sure of. Now, from then here onwards, I'd like to take some examples of the work that I have done, very often supervising students, but involved in field work. So let me quickly go through them. The freshwater insects of Sri Lanka. They're mostly invisible and highly undervalued. I've just given some examples. The photo credits are Mr. Manoj Kanakaratne, who is he's a former zoology honors graduate from the University of Colombo, one of my former students. He did his master's study, his master's funded by Dilma Conservation. You all know, I believe, of the Dilma Tea Group, and they have an arm, Dilma Conservation, that funds conservation work. And they very generously funded a study into the aquatic insects of the streams that flow through Kahavatta plantations. Dilma manages Kahavatta plantations, and there were like 6 estates, and the Anarilhena, Queensberry. Those estates range from the highest the highest levels, to the lowest levels reaching Kahavatta in Ratnapur. So Manoj, he's what he did was he sort of he stratified the sampling streams into 3 main levels, okay, and the elevational levels were each sampled mainly the streams that flowed through the tea plantation, but the water quality and the aquatic insects were sampled in the places where those streams originated at the highest level. They were obviously the forest reserve. They were springs. Then sample the water quality and the insects before the stream entered the estate, midway through the estate, and when it left the estate. Because that way we need to see, are there any changes in the water quality and in the associated and in the aquatic insects, right? Now, I have to say, to give credit to this was the late Mr. Merrill J. Fernando, who actually was the head of Dilma Conservation at that time. It was 29 to 2014. They never told us, this is what you ought to do. We said, Sri Lanka has not studied its aquatic insects, and we think it's really important. And, as you know, if you go to the museum or you sort of look at in historical records, it's mostly the British colonial officials. They were not really entomologists in the way that I would call, somebody an entomologist, but they were very good naturalists, and they studied, obviously, in their spare time or whatever. They studied and obviously made extensive collections, and that is why the British Museum has possibly the best collection of Sri Lankan insects. And of course, there is also a considerable amount given to the National Museum here. They published these books in the Fauna of British India and Sri Lanka, this, Ceylon, right? And those are like the baselines on which, when we were students and even afterwards, we would sort of consult to see where were these insects and who were they, right? So now, after they left Sri Lanka, obviously, nothing seems to have been done. And when we told this to Dilma Conservation, they were very happy and allowed us a free hand. It was a fascinating study. This project was supervised by Professor Amramal Jayatunga and myself. And Manoj developed the most extensive database on freshwater quality, Those were like, chemical, how may I say, chemical parameters using water quality testing. And he also identified what we call the assemblages of aquatic insects that lived in those streams, in the same sampling points, right? He did an extremely lengthy and very hard work because it's not easy working in those extremely cold conditions. The Dilma company was very helpful and provided him, many facilities. But he was able to show this connection. I believe this is the first time that, Sri Lanka has done this kind of extensive work for so long and showed this important connection. This is known from world over. Aquatic insects are one of the best indicators of water quality. And you don't really have to do chemical tests, because if you know your aquatic insects and then you look at them over a period of time and you take sort of sample, you can sample them, you know whether the water has been polluted, not just at that time, but even in the past. Because these insects spend, their eggs are very often laid on the surface sometimes underwater. Then they develop in the water, right? And they become adults. And if they are fully aquatic, the adults are also in the water. And if they're semi-aquatic, like dragonflies, adults will be terrestrial, whereas their larvae are aquatic, living in the water. Now, if they've been exposed to some pollutant or some toxic matter in the past, that may have passed, right? Remember, their life cycle, their changes would be reflected in their life history, right? So, if suddenly a group of, say, a particular species is disappear, and we know it's a good indicator, obviously, without having to do a chemical test on the water, we know that there's something that is wrong with the water. I'm putting something, in a sort of a long-winded explanation in a short way. These are obviously, I wanted to show you my fieldwork days, Far corner is Vilpattu National Park, and Manoj is the person who is hanging on the jeep right at the front. And the others are Nissan Sala and, our lab assistant. And yeah, this is the other one is, the Manayavakanda Forest Reserve in Anuradhapura district. But one of the best dry zone forests that I have seen. It has some natural streams originating from the top of the Manayavakanda flowing down and has some very specific important aquatic insects. This is us after doing the sampling. By the way, all those people except myself are not in Sri Lanka. That's the country. These habitats are my favorite fieldwork sites. This is a stream outside the peak wilderness. It is flowing from the peak wilderness, but it is in one of the villages below that. And it shows very good quality water. Still, those streams have good quality water, mainly because the upper watershed is protected. If it was not, the stream wouldn't be like this. You will not have that clear water. Neither would you have, which obviously you can't see, the very important diversity and the big diversity of aquatic insects. These are not this, but, in general, the most, the habitats that I really like working in particularly in wet zone forests. But aquatic insects are not confined only to wet zone forests. They are also found in dry zone forests. But they are different. The wet zone and the dry zone has very clear differences in the insect groups that they have. Not the orders are not completely different, but, within that. Now, Manoj Kanagaratna, he is now, he became a customs officer after he graduated from the university. He did his MPhil while he was a customs officer. In 2023 or 2022 end, he left for Australia because he got what do you call, permanent residency. I'm very proud to say that maybe 1 month ago, Manoj has been given the prestigious status of being a river health scientist. There were only 22 river health scientists in the world, and he is now 23. And the first and only Sri Lankan born scientist accredited by the University of Canberra and the Australian government in river health assessment and aquatic macroinvertebrates. These are the photographs. Of course, he now works in a very advanced lab with advanced equipment. And then those two other photographs are of him doing work, not Sri Lanka, this is Australia. Then let me turn very quickly to tiger beetles. Have you heard of tiger beetles? Anybody? Yeah, see, there are people. These are the six-legged tigers of Sri Lanka. This is a PhD supervision done by me and Professor Alfred Vogler at Imperial College. The student was Chandima Dangala. She is Professor Chandima Dangala. And we didn't quite realize that Sri Lanka is a global biodiversity hotspot for tiger beetles. Now, you know, at the last count, when I say last count, when this work stopped, it was about 2020. We've identified 40 species of ground-dwelling beetles. Of course, before us, oops. Okay. Before us, the most comprehensive survey had been done by Fowler in 2012. After that, there had been an American and an Italian scientist who had studied the tiger beetles of the Indian subcontinent, that included Sri Lanka. And 40 species of ground-living tiger beetles, right? And out of that, 14 species are endemic. But look at that, the other one. 31 species of arboreal tiger beetles, out of which 25 are endemic. Now, if this was a vertebrate group, we would have made headlines because this is an extremely high level of biological, of endemism for any plant or animal group. And that shows Sri Lanka's importance. And what is this? See, I put a photograph, one of a, of course, the tiger beetle is much, much larger than what it actually is. It's a small animal. Now, if you see, all of you, I'm sure you go on, you go to the coastal areas from time to time. Next time you go, look carefully where the surf comes in. There are these very small insects. They only come out when the sunlight is very bright because they really have to have very bright sunlight to be active. They're very active predators, right? And they have the ability to run very fast. They can fly, but they don't fly for long distances. They sort of fly for a short period and then come down, but they can run extremely fast. Obviously, they have to catch their prey. And they're always found when the waves come in, they're always running along the edges where the waves sort of come to the shore. And you can identify them clearly. Small, very often brown, but sometimes they are shiny brown metallic. And they have these spots, not everybody, but most of them. And the arboreal tiger beetles, they're not easy to spot because they are very well camouflaged. They, sort of rest on branches or bark of the trees. Again, they are predators. This is an extremely important group. What I found interesting was that, see, the overseas entomologists who had never come to Sri Lanka or known anything about it, based on their records, they realized that Sri Lanka had a very high level of endemism, and that they ought to come here. The last work had been done in the 1980s or whatever. And after that, the work that my student did from 2007 to 2020, she also did some work on her own, right? These are, again, two now. These are not, Gemini generated real, pictures taken by humans, the student, Agastya Thotagama, who was Chandima's student, took these pictures and sent me those. And the tiger beetles are exactly like the way you see them here, right? Yeah, I just told you this. There's a fascinating, see, when we did this, we sampled many habitats before Chandima branched out looking at the arboreal tiger beetle. There was a fascinating connection, fascinating to me, with the ancient reservoir systems of Sri Lanka. There were some tiger beetles that were confined to those ancient reservoirs, the what you call the Vauban, you know. And when we walk around, we sort of see them only on those areas, the paths that sort of you take round the tank, nowhere else. But when we search the literature, those same tiger beetle species, unless they're endemic, you know, they are not found anywhere else, they are found only in the seashore. Okay? And up to this day, I haven't been able to, we need to develop a very sort of acceptable scientific way of explaining this. How did this happen? The most obvious answer might be they brought sand from the coastal zone thousands of years ago. Now remember, tank systems are not natural, right? They are man-made. They may be 3,000, 4,000 years old, but yet they are not they are not natural. They are man-made. So the tiger beetles did not originate there. They could not have. How did they get there? My hunch is, okay, transported sand from coastal zones to build the bunds of the ancient reservoirs. Or all those tanks are connected finally to the sea through a very complex, intricate network of canals and rivers. Maybe the tiger beetles migrated along that because all those banks and, you know, the edges of any waterway has some amount of sand. So, I mean, I have not been able to prove that either way, but I'm fascinated by the fact that there are tiger beetles that are confined to the ancient reservoir system here, whereas in the Philippines, or maybe, in the Philippines, Vietnam, they're confined entirely to the seashore. This was something else I wanted to bring to your attention. Agastya discovered after 107 years, this Jansinia, which had been recorded by Horn, right, Walter Horn, and nobody had cited it afterwards, not even the extensive work done by the Italian, US, American scientists had recorded this in Bundara National Park. This is, you know, it was found resting on a flower. And obviously at that time, they didn't realize that these are the species that was like missing for 107 years. And then when they looked at the records, the photographs and the identification features, this was it, right? Agastya also is not here. He too is in Australia. So I'm afraid all the entomologists that we have trained, you know, I cannot blame them, but they're doing pretty well, but they contributed a lot to advancing the science of entomology and the biological diversity of insects in this country. Now, this picture is from the European Space Agency. But last year, September, I went on a field visit to the Adams Bridge National Park, not with my students, but because I work in a committee of the Department of Wildlife Conservation, and they wanted us to go there and take a look. Now, from my knowledge of what tiger beetles are, I thought, now because they are very closely associated with seashore, but the Adams Bridge, the islands are not stable islands. I think you know this because there are like, say on a given day, there are 8 islands. Next day morning, 2 islands are broken into 2. All right. And then of course, not that we don't claim anything beyond our territory, right? The rest is owned by India. But within our range, there's that line. I don't think you can see that. There are these sort of shifting. They're not really islands. They are sandy shoals, and they keep on shifting in their appearance and, sort of size and length and everything. And, the sea is very shallow. When we went there, we visited only about 3 or 4 islands out of the total that should have been there. The first 2 islands were not, they were just very small. On the 3rd island, when I got out of the boat, there were tiger beetles. I never expected this because these are very, how do I say, these are ecosystems that are in constant change. They're not stable because the seawater sometimes sort of, covers nearly 70% of whatever that is called the island. Then it recedes and something reappears again, like that. So when I came back, I told the DWC's, the senior management, whatever you do, of course, these islands are also very important for seabirds because when you get closer to the Indian border side, there are many, many species of seabirds nesting there. So obviously, that's why it is a national park. No matter what you do to the other islands, I think it's important that we at least identify the tiger beetles that I took some photographs, and they were like the species that we had already known from the mainland, but we only spent about 3-4 hours there. That's not enough. We should do a proper survey and then, see. I mean, there might very well be new species that we did not know before. I don't think Fowler or even those American scientists had visited these islands in order to look for this. I was just simply amazed because I never expected them to be on this constantly shifting, sandy shoals that are in a state of flux. Okay, why do we need dung beetles? I think a lot of people must have heard of dung beetles because this is Dr. Nisansela Perra. She's not exactly standing in a forested area, right? This is the only photograph that I got from her, right? But doesn't matter. She studied entomology here. She did not study dung beetles here, but I know Professor Inoka Kudavidanage from Saparagamuwa. She studied dung beetles. But Australia has a very big, important project on using dung beetle, because one of Australia's, I suppose, biggest industries is the dairy industry. And they need to maintain them in the most productive way and in an environmentally sustainable manner. And dung beetles play a very important role in breaking down the dung of the dairy animals. And even though Australia has had native dung beetles, you can read what I've written here. When the European colonists arrived, they brought their own livestock animals. They were not the marsupial animals that originated and are living, they are the natives of Australia, like Australia, New Zealand, that area. So when they brought them there and started the livestock industry, the native dung beetles were not adapted and they had to import them. It's still going on today. And Nisansela has been working on it, and I think she still works on it. The next one I just want to highlight is this is Mahausa Kanda, the rehabilitated lowland wet zone area that had been formerly turned into a rubber plantation. The Ellavala family owns that piece of land, but they had not grown rubber on it for more than 2 decades, 2 decades until before 2020, I think, 2018. And it had naturally regenerated into a secondary forest, but one of good quality. And Mrs. Nalini Ellavala had, she was very interested in, sort of documenting the biodiversity. And there was I think he was Russian or maybe Ukrainian, I don't know, Roman Prokhorov, who I think he contacted her, and he was a remarkable photographer. He was not quite an entomologist, I think, but together with Professor Jayanti Edirisinghe and Professor Inoka Karunaratne, both from the University of Peradeniya, again, two very highly respected and very productive academic entomologists, they did this book. It's a remarkable book, and the photographs are just stunning because obviously, taken through macro lenses and shown much bigger than what they are, but it's a remarkable documentary of what a wet zone, a secondary wet zone forest has. So you can imagine what a similar piece of area in the Singaraja World Heritage Site might have. And I think I forgot, I couldn't check on that. I gave the opening address at the launch of the book. I think some of those species may not have been identified. They may very well be new to science, but amazing colors and amazing diversity of body structures. These are the pictures. And Professor Nilanthi De Silva, who is Nalini Ellawala's daughter, I'm sure Professor Inoka, you know who this is. She very kindly gave me the photographs to use in this presentation. So I'm coming to the, the last few slides. We don't know what is threatened, what has got extinct. We don't know because we haven't looked. We might never know. So, just a sort of a light-hearted thing about an insect in despair, right? I'm not saying that the insects are despairing because, something, but the fact that their, habitats are disappearing very fast. But the other thing is this: Sri Lankan entomologists are endangered species, right? I mean, this from what I told you just now, all my former PhD students have left. They've left the country, right? They're doing extremely good work in other countries, and I honestly can't blame them for leaving either, right? So this is the biggest problem, and I don't think this can be addressed that easily either. So I'd like to wind up by perhaps suggesting what an organization like the Sri Lanka Natural History Society could do. And by the way, what I did was I just rushed through some work that took like, say, 20 years, or maybe less, about 18 years, and sort of compress them into, short segments because I wanted, I didn't want you all to fall asleep listening to some boring academic stuff, right? And now, there is now in the absence of, let's say, it's very difficult to find entomologists properly trained, all that. But I believe you've heard of citizen science. It is now increasing in its capacity, capability, and increasingly being recognized. But of course, citizen science grounded in sound scientific principle. That's what I would like to see. But the Sri Lanka Natural Society could do is, in a small way, start a small group. You need not only think, oh, we need young people. Not so young people can also do insect watching. This is not some strenuous thing like chasing behind elephants or, leopards or whatever. And, organize small things. Let me tell you this, because now this is, see, I get to review papers. Papers means, articles that are submitted to various journals. Some of them too, the Department of Wildlife Conservation has a Wild Lanka journal. So there are people who submit papers to that, and because I'm on the editorial board, I get sent. Now, citizen science is fine, but if you want to be taken seriously, you do the work, plus be taken seriously in the sense that you have verifiable, robust information, data, right? That requires a little bit more effort. So I think there are enough people who have the scientific knowledge in this audience and also in the SLNHS, build that basis of, okay, you do this observation, this is the way you record it. We all have, even our phones can do the GPS recording now, where were you, at what point, all that. And it's you can access very good quality satellite data for free, right? What I do like about AI is that it has made things that took months and months possible in a few hours, right? And very good quality stuff. So, try to maintain some sort of records of a particular insect group or groups, as part of your natural history work. But if you wish to, I think this is, the best way, link up. There are many like-minded organizations. Link up with them and see whether you can work jointly, because that enables you, that gives you obviously a bigger pool of people who will work, right? And those organizations also have professional scientists who are members of that. I'm sure there are some here. And then establish a database that is verifiable, reliable. Maybe you can upload it, like the way like Design Naturalist or whatever. It's very easy. It's not expensive. You don't need that much money to do these things. But make your results known to the public and to key government agencies, such as the Department of Wildlife Conservation and maybe the Ministry of Environment, or even if they seem not to take any notice, keep your records and your information available to the public, and there will come a time when the information that you maintain might actually be very important. Not might, it will be. Why? Because I still am. I was the team leader for preparing what is called the 7th National Report of Sri Lanka to the Convention on Biological Diversity. The Ministry of Environment is the focal point. And however, they sort of, not outsource. You can't outsource a national document. We just do the technical stuff and put it together. Now, this report was compiled from September last year, 2025, up to now. Even now, I'm sort of doing the final touches to it. One version has been already uploaded to meet the deadline. This is the national report of this country to show what is it doing on biodiversity conservation as part of its obligations to the United Nations. We've signed the Convention on Biological Diversity, and that brings with it responsibilities. We have obligations. Now, when I started, this time we had, not we, Sri Lanka and everybody else had to report on 23 targets. I'm not sure if you've heard this, but the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework, it has 23 targets, global targets. We have to report against everything. Report means show the progress. Now there is increasing recognition of the role played by citizen scientists in maintaining records. Because the government can't do it alone. They can't, because the wildlife department is overwhelmed with human-elephant conflict, right? And other things that mostly it is that. But the forest department, they also have their own. Governments cannot do this alone. You cannot just point fingers at them and say, you haven't done your job. No, I think we all have to play our part. And this is where I think the work of organizations like SLNHS, getting together, hopefully with other like-minded ones, will be very important. Because European countries like Germany have shown very clearly that nearly 80% of their insect fauna has disappeared over the past 50 years. We can't say that because we don't know. We don't have a baseline. We did not measure. Even now, we are not measuring. They are one of the most important components of biological diversity in Sri Lanka. We are a global biodiversity hotspot, right? And I sort of always keep on saying that we don't need to align with the Western Ghats if we actually know 50% of our insect diversity. I think we can stand up on our own as a separate global biodiversity hotspot, right? So I'd like to suggest that you, consider this, if possible, and hopefully contribute, obviously, in the absence of, the number of entomologists that this country ought to have. There are entomologists, but they are either doing medical entomology or they're doing agricultural entomology. they are tasked with trying to manage agricultural crop pests. That they are also serious problem. Medical entomology, I don't need to tell you, with this dengue epidemic, right? I mean, all they see are mosquitoes. So thank you very much for your attention, and I really appreciate. I'd like to say again how much I really appreciate, and I'm very honored by this invitation. All the best to you. Thank you. I'll switch this off. Yeah.
Start the Q&A.
Okay.
So there's time now for question and answers. Can Mr. Chris Correa come to paper, please come on? Q&A.
Thank you so much, Dr. Pallewatta. That was fascinating. Brilliant suggestion on we must take you up on the citizen science hour. And yeah, I have many questions for you myself, but over to the audience. Is there a microphone?
There's a microphone. There's a microphone.
Yeah. I just want to
Yeah, I can't hear you, my dear.
Yeah,
Yes.
Go ahead.
just take it over.
Is it possible to share the results of the first research done with the Gilmer Conservation Fund? So what happened to the water quality in the first and second term?
Yes, Manoj's thesis, I don't think it is public, right? But it doesn't matter. There is one paper I think he did see, because he didn't publish. I mean, the full potential of that data set is still not, has not been exploited, if I may say so, because he became a customs officer and then he went to Australia. Oh, by the way, I forgot to say, I mean, he has become an aquatic insect specialist, as you saw, right? He has now gone on to become one of the world's 23 river health scientists. Sure. If I may have your email address, or you can give it to somebody in the SLNHS, I can send you a short sort of, I think there are some, one paper or two, go and, but I'll tell you what it is. Fundamentally, at the upper levels, the water quality was very good. And then getting water areas that are more and more, that have less and less natural, right? The human habitations. And interestingly, this is what I told was his father, who actually was at the helm at that time. And I don't think Rehan really knew about the findings of this project, but I told him that the water quality of the streams inside the tea estate was good. This is contrary to what we expect, because we think tea estates, they use fungicides, right? I don't think they use pesticides, because otherwise they lose their overseas markets, but they have to use fungicides, right? And they also do weeding, because, weeding means soil erosion. Then the soil washes down into the lowest plane, which is lowest place, which is where the stream flows, right? Amazingly, the water quality within the tea estate was also quite good at the higher levels. But when it came close and closer to Pallewatta, which is the lowest level, it was not good as what it was. And amazingly, the kinds of insects that we found at the upper levels, they changed too. The very specialized insects, they require very specialized microhabitat conditions, good quality water, less pollution, all that. They disappear. So in a nutshell, that's it. Right?
Yeah, any other questions? Just a thought, Doctor, while we're waiting. Sorry, go ahead.
Yes.
We have a question from Zoom.
Yes.
Can you briefly explain the connection between the proliferation of insects due to climate change? For example, mosquitoes in Sri Lanka.
Well, thank you very much. Proliferation of mosquitoes, number one, is due to our behavior, right? Climate change, yes, it is upon us, right? And what is climate change doing? Always this is you ask the epidemiologists of the Ministry of Health. I'm a member of their dengue vector management committee, right? There is a very well-known peak. You can go on the website and see after the rainfall, I mean, like the monsoon, rainfall that particular time, there's a dengue epidemic, right? This time, the difference is that it's much, much greater than what it normally is, okay? I'm not quite sure what the reasons are, but the proliferation of mosquitoes is because we have created the breeding grounds. That's it. Climate change will obviously have higher rainfall in some places, but if climate change creates a major drought, like the way now we are being told that there's a El Nino event coming, right? I think people who have suffered from dengue are waiting for the El Nino to come, right? But once it comes, it will have other major, repercussions. Yeah, obvious, right? For supply and all that. So it's not climate change, number one, it's us.
Insects also cause a lot of damage to crops, like this Pitimapuma and there is coconut beetles and so on. Any idea of how those can be controlled? And
Yeah, I mean, it's what I think is sure. Right now, we are still an agriculture-based economy, yeah? And the overuse of pesticides or use of pesticides is the number one concern. Okay, and I cannot agree with this. You do not have to use that amount of pesticides to control the problems you have. There is a concept, there's a world accepted methodology called integrated pest management. That means you use less synthetic pesticides, but you allow natural predators, like, shortly. Yeah. Those also to thrive by reducing the number of pesticides, the frequency of use, and growing certain crops, certain types of plants that are naturally insect repellent. You all have heard of daspetia, no? Yeah, right. It's very well proven, scientifically proven, right? Now, when it comes to commercial agriculture, much of this is quite difficult. But it also means that an attitudinal change among the farmers and the commercial scale owners. I agree with you. Pitimapuna is extremely serious. Pitimapuna is an invasive insect, right? So, if it affects coconut trees, are you going to, spray the things on top? No, you can't. But the plant suffers. I agree. There are no easy solutions to that. However, are you aware of there is a again a UN thing, but the world has signed on to something called the transformation of food systems to make it more environmentally sustainable. Mainly because of the levels of pesticides that are in the food chain. Now, I don't know. I am sure if you are people in your faculty will talk about this better. Do we know the pesticide residues in what we are eating? And I cannot prove a connection, in a scientific way. But I suspect that many of the non-communicable serious diseases, now I'm going away from what you asked me, right? But all I'm trying to say is that, okay, we have to reduce. But in order to, obviously, we have to have crops. Otherwise, how are you going to live? How are you going to eat, right? That place, that gap can be filled by doing other things. But it requires lot more effort, right? And biological control agents can be introduced up to a point, right? Not all, but they will vanish if you start, just spraying again. Right? I mean, coconut is, very difficult thing to sort of manage because of the hydrogen trees and the physiology and all that. But there are not all crops are that type. Yeah.
thank you, doctor. Any other question? Another question, grasshopper. I don't see many grasshoppers nowadays. They were, no, I am.
Yeah, no, as children, we used to think, we know,
Yeah.
right?
That was due to pesticides.
No, I think that the grasshoppers living in grass, right? So, I mean, how many grass cutters are now left in your urban areas? Right? Fireflies, exactly. You know, I'm very happy to say this. There is a young entomologist, so there are quite a few, one or two, Dr. Gambika Vijay from the University of Rumana. He's a firefly specialist and he is doing excellent work recording. Maybe you should invite him next time,
Next year.
Yes, you should, because he's, young person, very sort of, capable of doing a lot of hard field work. And he is documenting. By the way, there are some areas in southern Sri Lanka, like some conjugator like things. Some fireflies are found only in those places, right? The endemics, right? But in Thailand, they have a tourism industry built around fireflies, right? They take people out to see fireflies. Okay. And you're right. Fireflies might also be not coming out because of light pollution.
Every child in parent and in university.
Yes.
I mean,
Yes.
I mean, we took it for granted and we used to
Chase behind them. Yes, exactly. But they're not there anymore, right? Yeah, I know. Fireflies are also affected by pesticide residues. But there are any university, inside the university, I'm a little, surprised.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a huge area.
I don't know what it's now. It's a.
No, I don't think it has. I don't think it has.
Any last question?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so. It's a University of Mumbai.
Oh, yes.
Some of our students were being literature. So they were, right, they borrowed from other universities.
Okay, you want her to, may I repeat the question? What you said is that there is very little literature on fireflies. Yes, I agree. The fauna of British India, we have those ancient records, but I can give you Dr. Vijay's contacts because he's a, very capable and he's a member of the IUCN Global Firefly Group. I'm pretty heartened by his work. There are people left, doing this kind of work.
Yeah, any more questions?
Yes.
If I may ask the last question,
She has.
sorry, yeah.
Yes.
Current topic, fumigation and mosquito law, which they say is not.
Mine was
A
same
good
question.
idea. Not a good idea, not effective also. What are your comments?
I completely agree with you. I'm a member of that vector management committee. Fumigation is not helpful, right? Earlier they used to have kerosene or something or whatever. Then they obviously realized now kerosene has got very expensive. More than that, people should not be inhaling kerosene fumes. Okay, if they mix it with water, same, no problem, right? The pesticide that is used is not losing its, power or whatever. And they can very well mix it with water and spray, right? Guess what? The community members to whom they were spraying, they complained saying, right? There's no smell now, right? And they were against.
What is the component? Is it some pesticide or
Insecticide.
not kerosene?
Huh?
Kerosene, not
No,
kerosene.
kerosene. No, good heavens, no, not
Kerosene,
kerosene.
that's
Right?
right.
Kerosene was only used to other, just to sort of that's no, right? And but now look, it is the what fumigation has is knockdown effect of flying insects.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's a very temporary thing, and obviously it's not discriminating.
Yeah.
It's a generality. It will knock down all the flying insects,
Yeah.
including the beneficial ones. Right? And I honestly don't think I want to inhale those insects. See, the
Yeah, yes, I live in Delhi. Now Delhi is identified as a hotspot of Delhi, right? And the government is thinking of introducing, you heard, maybe you read it, the Wolbachia, there is intracellular parasite. Tried out in Australia and not in several other countries and very successful. Of course, it doesn't bring out results like this, it may take at least 1 year, right? But environmentally friendly and appears to be not affecting non-target organisms and all that, right? Now, I don't have, I mean, okay, we try our level best to keep non-breeding surroundings in our home gardens or whatever. I hope my neighbors also do the same thing, right? And of course, there are government institutions that don't seem to keep their premises clean, but I complain because of who I am, I suppose, right? I'm a practice unbig but when they come to inspect our houses, I tell them, you look at my house, but you take a look over the wall and see what is that government institution doing. So maybe that has gone, now they are clearing up. Thanks, yeah, in where I live, very small population, I mean, very less populations of mosquitoes. I can't explain, right? But I believe it's because we are making a conscious effort. Okay. Fogging is not helpful.
Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you.
Is that just one last question?
Yes, yes.
Hi.
Hello, how I haven't met you for a long time.
Ask to the, Peter, use that mic.
People check one type of insect that I have noticed again, like just about these, things like insects like millipedes, acarallas, and here in the area that I live in Nirmalie,
Yeah.
there was earlier but in season the whole roads are these acarallas and
Oh,
so I noticed that listening is that also
well, I see it's because look how urbanized your area has become. Huh? Take a simple look around. 10 years ago, was it that crowded? Right? And if there are no hakarallas on the roadside, that means so many vehicles, so much disturbance, right? So they're not going to, obviously, that's not the best habitat for them. Yeah. University of Colombo's, we have our grounds, We used to study grasshopper diversity by looking at the edges, right? Now, too many walkers in the morning.
Okay, so let's draw the to close. Thank you, Nirmalie, very much. And may I call on Lalitha, the committee member, to give the vote of thanks.
Yes. Thank you, Professor Nirmalie Pallewatta, for the most interesting talk, because it's a subject which I think a lot of people are not really aware of. So today we learned a lot, and also, happy to see, I think, a rare occasion of an endangered species giving a lecture. And especially among the things I never thought that insects play such a key role in purifying water. And we think it's the trees, the sand, and the fish and so on. So that's something, we have to be mindful. And again, I think we have to thank the attendees, the guests and the members, because, we are the ones who can spread this knowledge about insects, which very few people know. And we have to thank our sponsors, George Stewart and Company, because without them, we would not having this kind of a conducive environment. And also the university staff who always are there to help us. And last but not least, behind the scenes, the committee members and, President Inoka, who do all the work. And I just want to, leave with a thought. Now, we through the Wildlife Society also, there are these butterfly gardens.
Yes.
Has there ever been any thought of an insect garden because I don't know whether you, Professor, who gave the lecture at the NPS long ago,
Yes.
And at that time, Jihan and I, we tried to work with the UDA, because along Lake Drive, there are two bridges, And between those bridges, if you come from Rajagiriya side,
Yes.
you see an island.
Yes.
And if you, let's say, build a butterfly bridge and connect, you can have a fantastic, insect garden. So for, the UDA was not interested. So now today we have, very senior George Stewart's representatives also here. Can't George Stewart's also get involved with our society or whatever and think of creating a tiny insect garden and with you being a part of it, because I think that can create a lot of awareness and it's very easy for people to walk across and do something. So that's a thought I just want to leave behind. I don't know if you have any comments on that.
Well, I try to make a quick suggestion, yes. But it's not only the butterflies that will come.
Yeah.
Unknown, unseen by you, there will be many other species of insects.
No, I mean, we
Yeah.
can create it as an insect garden, not a,
Sure,
not a butterfly
I
garden,
agree, right? And then, they will come. And if any one of you in the audience has estates where you can set apart a small portion, not a big one. And if your estate borders a forest reserve, all the better. Talk to the forest department. They are no longer the old forest department. They are quite, how may I say, forward-looking forest department to the best of their ability, right? They will also suggest, yes, we would like to support you, because I know people who have lands in Kitulgala, right? Some of my friends, they have sort of like it's extremely important to do what you call ecological corridors, right? Because animals start using that to cross between, because the wet zone is the most highly fragmented forests of this country. But that's the one also that has the highest biodiversity.
Right.
And, you will be amazed. I mean, I will ask Professor Nilanthi, I can see you, about Mahautsakam, right? Because she actually asked me some time ago, why don't you bring your students there? It's in Pallewatta, Ellawal, right? Very close by.
We did that.
Yeah, you did that.
We should.
We should, yeah. I will ask Professor Nilanthi whether we could, and it will be really nice, because I have a copy of the book. I don't know where the book is now, whether it's available, or whatever. However, everybody has very good quality cameras in their homes. So the things that we used to get by holding the cameras and lenses, you can now do those things very easily, right? By having your camera phones pointed at an insect as long as it stays in one place, right? So, it's a very simple thing to do, but very informative, and obviously, may I say, very healthy also to walk around and, sort of enjoy the fresh air and the water and, all that. Yeah, sure. I really think, if George Stewart, I was going to say, not only them, and they also have, and
All the word, not George Stewart.
yes, I know. No,
No, but just a thought.
Yeah,
because it's a easy access place. Anyone can go there, and the interest will grow with that kind of thing.
Tell you, I did this is going on and on beyond your time frame. When I did this national report, the private sector of Sri Lanka showed the biggest change between the last national report and now. His thank you speech got hijacked by me.
No, I finished it.
Right, thank you. Right, because the last report was 2018 and the private sector was nowhere. It was not even considered. But 2025, the private sector's contributions to biodiversity conservation through maintaining estate biodiversity corridors. I told you, Nirmalie Conservation has done an excellent piece of work, the Endana Biodiversity Corridor in their plantations, in a plantation adjoining the Singaraj Forest, right? Sound scientific basis, they've got, two professors from Gujarat University who do the plant work, and then I'm really thrilled. There's a lovely video on it. So I'm sure, if you look at it, you will see the work that they are doing. That's why I say that, you can join, you ought to join with others, because then it makes the effort better and more meaningful and more impactful. And the corporate sector is becoming more and more interested in doing this kind of thing. Maybe because they cannot avoid it, because now in order to access the European Union markets, there is something called the European Lands Directive. Now going to be operational, everybody has to look sharp, right? Because, they will reject our goods. That is a different story that I'm talking about. But increasingly, high value markets that to who we sell our export targets, countries, are increasingly demanding ever more stringent environmental compliance. Thank you.